Alrighty, welcome to the 147th edition of the MMA Circus here on BloodyElbow.com and live on YouTube. My name's Nick Baldwin, and joining me, kind of as always now, is our guest co-host this week of MMAfighting.com. It's Jed Meshew. You know him. Jed, what's going on? We're about half an hour late. Looking down at the clock, we're 25 minutes.
Hand up. That's me.
We're supposed to go live 25 minutes ago exactly. What happened?
Hand up. That's me. I can't speak about it on air because there are potential pending legal issues. Nothing.
And you're major. A lawyer, and you got to follow the rules.
Nothing major. I just don't want to. If the state comes down on me hard, I don't want to give them any extra evidence. No, I got pulled over for a speeding ticket. MBD. I was rushing to get here on time. And I did it. Hand up. Don't drive reckless, kids. It was a bad look. But everyone in Atlanta mostly speeds. I happened to just get caught that time. It happens. It's not something I'm happy about, but it's whatever.
Is it like $200, $300? What are we looking at?
I haven't had a speeding ticket in like 7 years, so I don't know. My guess is 200, maybe less. I wasn't going that much over. But
what was the speed limit in the zone you're driving in, and then how much over were you?
I was at 55. I was doing 12 over. So
that's not even that bad.
No, it's a highway section. Like everyone does it, but it's just one of those things. I was breaking the law, and so that's okay. Like I've done a lot worse in my driving history. So like when I was younger, when I was your age, even a little younger, I did a lot of real stupid things behind the car. And now that I'm older, I look back on that and think, wow, that was reckless and awful. And so whenever I get pulled over for a speeding ticket or something like that, I just kind of think, karma, that's fine. I didn't get pulled over for stuff that I will probably have me still not having a license. So, yeah, it's whatever. It sucks, but.
Well, I have yet to get into an accident, nor have I gotten a speeding ticket. And nowadays that seems kind of rare. So pat on the back.
It is. Good work for you. Keep it that way.
Well, we have a jam-packed show. I would love to talk about, you getting a speeding ticket for the whole show. I'm sure we could somehow talk about it for about an hour, but we're not going to do that. We want to entertain the fans. Actually, that probably would entertain them more than what we're going to talk about. But people listening in like MMA, so we will talk about some face punching. A lot has happened in the past. Even 24 hours, go back to the weekend. We had a lot of combat sports over the weekend. Of course, the two major cards, UFC 220 and Bellator 192. Different sides of the U.S. We had one in Boston. That was the UFC card, headlined by Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou for the UFC heavyweight title. Way over in L.A., or just outside of L.A., in Inglewood, California, we had Roy McDonald versus Douglas Lima for the welterweight title. We also had Rampage Jackson versus Chael Sonnen in the first of however many Bellator heavyweight tournament matches there will be. That was part of Bellator 192. So a lot happened over the weekend. Before we get into those cards, as a fan and as a person covering at least one of these cards, I saw you doing some Bellator stuff. I don't know if you have ended up doing any coverage for the UFC. Did you like having these two huge cards that were both worth watching pretty much simultaneously?
It's one of those things where it's pluses and minuses. I don't ever mind having good fight content on there. There's always fighting to watch. Shameless plug. If you haven't been following it already, me and Alexander Lee for MMAfighting.com have a new series out where every Monday night or every Monday afternoon, we have an article highlighting a lot of the lesser watched fights because there's always some fighting going on. So whenever there's good fighting going on, I'm for it, even if it's all on the same night. This happened to be one of those things where it sucks. I still haven't seen Qatar Burgos, and that most people seem to think that was the best fight of the weekend in total. But because I was covering the Bellator card for MMA Fighting, I didn't get to see all of the UFC event. So I still have – that's kind of lame. But at the same time, both of these cards were not great top to bottom. They were okay, and they had spots that were very good. So when you kind of mesh them together, it was sort of like you had one pretty strong, fight card out there. So pluses and minuses. I didn't mind it. At some point, I'll go back and watch Qatar Burgos. But I enjoyed the Bellator card certainly, and I enjoyed the UFC card for what I saw of it.
For me, I personally would rather two cards on two separate days, just because I like my MMA and I prioritize it over certain things. And so if Bellator was on Friday, I'd be willing to take out 2 hours of my Friday night to catch the main card of Bellator. Or at least
you're so young. You're so young. That's the thing. is I get it, and that makes a lot of sense, but like it is pretty nice to not have to have like if Bellator is on Friday, I have to work that Friday. I have to work the Bellator on Friday night, and then usually there's UFC on Saturday. So then I also I don't have to. I could skip the event, but I'm usually going to stay and watch the UFC card. So then my whole weekend is kind of taken from me. So it is sort of nice in this way that they are overlapping cards. I got a Friday night to do what I wanted to do or whatever. Whereas this upcoming weekend, I'm going to be covering Bellator for MMA fighting, and then on Saturday I'm going to Charlotte and covering Charlotte on the ground. So, it just takes up your whole weekend. You, my friend, wait till you get to college, and then you're going to think, shit, I would really like to have a Friday or a Saturday night to hang out.
It definitely depends on whether or not you're a homebody, whether you like to go out, whether you, depending how old you are, if you're in college, if you're living at a dorm or whatever. I mean, I can definitely see how having combat sports on both Friday and Saturday could absolutely suck. But if you're just addicted to MMA, like some people are, I could see how spacing it out is actually better because you're able to watch it all. Like you yourself, I mean, even if you were going to watch both cards, now you would have been able to see that pretty fun Cater versus Burgos fight, and you've yet to see it, and who knows if you will end up finding the time, because I mean, there's so much UFC going on, so chances are now you won't. There's definitely pros and cons. It depends what type of person you are. Do you have a life outside of fighting? If you do, this weekend was probably good. If you don't, well, you might have missed some fights you would have wanted to watch. What do we want to start with? UFC or Bellator?
Go with what you feel. I mean, like, it's what you want to start with here, because like I said, I watched all of Bellator. I was covering that for us. I saw most of the UFC. I think really the only fight I missed was Qatar Burgos. That was because that happened.
We can't talk about it all anyway.
Lima. Yeah, that came right during Rory Lima.
Right.
So obviously I missed that one.
Most people did live.
I watch a lot of the Volante Bajos for the exact same reason. I did see the co-main and main from the UFC, so obviously I can speak that. And I watched most of the undercard. So I'm happy to do whatever you want. Doesn't matter to me.
Well, both of them will go through pretty quickly because, as I said off the top, we do have some other things to talk about as well. So we'll start with Bellator. Pretty much just talk about the last couple of fights we had. In the co-main event, we, of course, had the welterweight championship on the line. Rory MacDonald becomes the new 170-pound title holder with a unanimous decision win over Douglas Lima. Very close fight, very competitive, very back and forth, up and down for both fighters. A lot of damage was done. Some could argue not the most appealing fight, but man, both fighters had to tough through a ton of stuff, specifically Rory MacDonald, of course. If you haven't seen it already, you probably have been living under a rock this past weekend, but of course, he had a huge hematoma on his leg. That's Rory. His eye, his face was bashed up, as was Lima's. Just a really gritty fight. Basically here, as we expected, Rory had the advantage on the ground. He was able to get Lima down quite a bit, and that's where he did his best work, whereas Lima got the better of the exchanges on the feet, but it was just not contested on the feet enough, basically. And round by round, you added up, and Rory got the nod, but it was still competitive, very close fight, and overall, it was rather entertaining.
I think all things considered, it was the best fight from the weekend. Again, haven't seen Qatar Burgos. But you're talking about a fight that I know two of the judges gave Rory 4 of the rounds, and one of them even gave him a 10-8 round. That's categorically insane. It was a very clear, like, this fight should have been extremely easy to score, a 2-2, and then like heading into the fifth, and then Rory took the fifth. Like that. And anybody who wants to argue something different, I think that you are fundamentally misunderstanding something about fighting here. And so when you consider that, it's for a belt. It's for arguably the title of best welterweight on the planet. I know Tyron Woodley justifiably has that title, but had Lima won, I think he would have had a fair claim to the title of best welterweight in the world. Rory did lose to Stephen Thompson not all that long ago, but at the same time, he does hold a win over Tyron Woodley. I think it's possible he could replicate that win should they fight again. So this was the fight with some of the biggest stakes on there, and of the fight with big stakes over the weekend, it was the most back and forth, the more it had a narrative to it. Rory took the first two. Lima came out, started working much better in rounds 3 and 4, clawed his way back into the fight, and then Rory gutted it out in the fifth. At the same time, the action, the actual, what was happening. Not that interesting for a lot of it because Rory did a lot of, I hate to call it, lay and pray, but he did a lot of lay and pray for the most part. So not like the greatest fight of all time, but I think all things considered, it was the best one of the weekend.
In the main event, we had Quentin Rampage Jackson fall to Chael Sonnen, and I know this surprised you. I think
Shocking.
I mean, I picked Rampage. I'm not going to even come close to saying I didn't or was considering Chael, but I feel like you on Before the Battle last week kind of convinced me just in my pick of Rampage to be even stronger than it was. I mean, going in, I was thinking, hey, Chael might have a chance here. I could definitely see a path to victory, but then you're just straight up, no, if you're picking Chael Sonnen, you're wrong. And so I guess I have too much faith in you sometimes, but Chael Sonnen got the job done. He's headed to the second round of the Bellator Grand Prix tournament in the heavyweight division, of course, the smallest guy, so it's pretty incredible. But he will have an interesting test ahead of him in the winner of Fedor Emelianenko and Frank Mir. What did you make of the Rampage win? How shocked were you? And what are your thoughts on, what Sonnen has ahead of him?
I was extremely surprised. I mean, you said it, and it's true. I thought this was among the easiest fights to predict of the whole weekend. I know Quentin Rampage Jackson is not Quentin Rampage Jackson anymore, but he came into this fight in much better shape than his last couple of times. He came in, looked like he was more motivated to be there, and historically, he's always been a very good defensive wrestler. Like, that's always been a strength of his, and really, Chael Sonnen needs takedowns to win fights. Like, he needs them, and I just didn't think he would get them because he is smaller. Quentin has always been good at that, but it showed me that Quentin Jackson is completely washed up. Like, Chael Sonnen is not in his anywhere close to his prime anymore, but that was too easy of a win for him over what should have been if he was going to win, it should have been much closer. But he was tagging Quentin on the feet with left hands, and then just kind of dominating the grappling exchanges too. Quentin didn't have any get up to him. He just seemed listless and like he didn't really want to be there, which is kind of a way that he's felt a lot. But I just thought that he would do better in this. To me, Rampage isn't going to retire. Good for him. He keep getting those paychecks, keep cashing them checks, man. But I don't ever need to see him fight again. If he can't beat Chael Sonnen, I'm whatever. I have zero interest in watching Quentin Jackson fight further. I know he will continue to fight and probably headline Bellator events. I have zero interest in watching him compete. Chael Sonnen, I have very little interest, but I am slightly intrigued how he would fare with Fedor, because I think that there's maybe an avenue to just take Fedor down and control him on the ground. If Frank Mir beats Fedor, I got to imagine the size difference there is just going to be too substantial. Plus, with Mir's grappling game on the bottom, I got to think Frank Mir gets that done there. But, good win for Chael Sonnen. He's still out here trying to compete, despite his advanced age. It's clear he still gives a shit about the game.
Yeah, it's kind of almost incredible just because he had the loss to Tito Ortiz, and that was a very uninspirational loss to Tito Ortiz, one that maybe shouldn't have happened. He followed up with the Wanderlei Silva win, but again, that wasn't the most entertaining. It was sort of straightforward. We knew what would happen for the most part. This one, not super pleasing to watch as well. Granted, I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched the first bit, and then that was as DC Ozdemir was starting, and you have to know what your priorities are, and it certainly wasn't Rampage Sonnen, which had already started out to be a bit of a bore. So from what I saw, Sonnen was just able to grapple him at will. And Rampage, let's be honest, as you said, he's washed. He shouldn't fight again. He will fight again, which is unfortunate. I don't have any interest in seeing Rampage fight again. I don't know. Does he just beats bums now? I don't know who you match him up against, and it's like a good matchup per se. On the other hand,
it just doesn't matter. Just put him in against another fading name so they can keep kind of squeezing whatever juice is left of his stardom out. And that's fine. He's not taking damage a ton, so it's fine for him to keep getting paychecks.
Yeah, I would complain more about him not retiring if he was getting knocked out left and right. Luckily, that's not the case, and so I'm a bit lenient, or more lenient, I should say, despite the amount or the time he's had in the sport. On the other hand, I don't have much of I hate to say this, but I don't care to see Sonnen compete that much anymore. I know he got the job done. I know he's on a 2-fight winning streak, but I just don't really. I don't need to see it anymore. And I know I will. He's going to fight again at least once this year. against the winner of Frank Mir versus Fedor, and that's interesting. I think the Fedor fight is close, as you said. I have to favor either Fedor or Mir against Chael. I just can't pick Chael in any matchup, but there's definitely one there that's closer than the other. So it's going to be interesting how he deals with that size, because I know Fedor has always been undersized as a heavyweight, but this is going to be sort of the first legit heavyweight. I mean, even counting Fedor, because Rampage has been at 205 his entire career, and so he's going to struggle with the move up in weight, so to speak. But hey, let's see what happens. Anything else we want to see from Bellator? I guess we should mention Aaron Pico. Everybody is, anyways. What a finish in that one. He took on Shane Crutchin and got the stoppage really quickly in the first round. I think it was under 30 seconds, something like that. Super quick. Obviously, a punch to the liver. And I believe he damaged a couple of Crutchin's ribs. Super impressive stuff from Aaron Pico. And I mean, I've started to fade Pico a little bit here and there, including in this fight, but learning my lessons. And this guy, despite losing in his first go at this, he's turning into a pretty legit fighter, or so it seems.
I mean, yeah, he's a really great fighter. There's a reason people thought he was going to be great, and he's bearing that out. I mean, young fighters are going to take losses, like prospect losses are just a thing that happens. And they have not given him softballs to start his career. I have thought they've mismanaged him, frankly. But after that first little speed bump, he has risen to the occasion of both his other outings. And I think at this point, we can probably just expect that to be the new normal with him. I don't want to just focus on Aaron Pico, though. I want to focus on both Aaron Pico and his training partner, Joey Davis. Joey Davis got the same sort of deal as Aaron Pico did. He got signed without ever having fought, was a standout wrestler. Aaron Pico came from the international circuit, having just missed the Olympic team this last go-around. Joey Davis went undefeated in his collegiate career, the first Division II wrestler ever to go undefeated, 130-something wins with no losses. This is a guy who has the grappling credentials, bar none, to be an elite prospect in MMA. And he's come out, and in his second or third fight, I don't entirely know which one this is for him, he landed also a great liver shot knockout with a spinning back kick KO. Both these guys train at the same gym. They train with Antonio McKee Jr., and that gym is clearly looking like a rising prospect gym that is something to take note of. And I think this paid huge dividends for Bellator. I mean, they're in a spot where they have to sign prospects early or take gambles on other ones, and they've taken 2 gambles here so far, and both seem like they're going to pay huge dividends for them. So not just Aaron Pico, Joey Davis, also sensational outing this weekend.
For sure. And also a quick shout out to Michael Chandler and Henry Corrales, who both picked up impressive wins on the main card as well. That does it for Bellator 192. Let's move on to UFC 220. Went down from Boston, Massachusetts on the same night, of course, last Saturday night, January 20th. We had 2 titles on the line, as I mentioned earlier. Stipe Miocic defends the heavyweight title for the 3rd time. History was made, I should say, last Saturday. He dominated Francis Ngannou by unanimous decision, 50-44 across the board. Throw in a 10-8 round for good measure. What a performance from Stipe Miocic. We both counted him out. A lot of people counted him out, and he proved once again why he's the baddest man on the planet.
We did not count him out, and I think that that's a mischaracterization that a lot of people have taken. I always knew that Stipe could win this fight, because we just don't know enough about Francis Ngannou. And it was always possible that what happened could happen. But I just thought it was more likely that Francis Ngannou was going to get the knockout. And we saw early on, he was doing very well. He was landing big punches. And then he, maybe he gassed a little bit. Maybe he had bad tactics. Maybe there was an adrenaline dump. Maybe Stipe is just a tough bastard. Maybe a combination of all of these things. But then Stipe kind of took over the fight as it kept going on. But I think it's not counting him out to pick against him. It's saying he has no chance he can ever win. And maybe some people thought that, but I don't think anybody disrespected Stipe Miocic. And I think I just don't like that narrative has been a thing that is around. Like, nobody thought he could beat this. And in part, I don't like that narrative because I think it poorly colors this fight. And what I mean by that is everyone after wants to talk about Stipe being the GOAT. And that's a different conversation. We can have that later if you want. I'm not trying to argue that point now. This was not a good performance from Stipe Miocic. And I'm sorry, but that's just an objective fact. Like, it is a good performance in that he won a tough stylistic fight. But it is a bad performance in that for the better part of 20 minutes, he had a dead man in front of him and did nothing substantive to try and get him out of there or to finish him. Now, credit Ngannou for being tough despite being completely gassed. But people, if Stipe was the favorite coming into this fight, if people thought, man, Stipe is about to do it, everyone would look back at this and be like, what the hell? Like, dude, this guy was dead in front of you. Just go fucking, like, go finish him. Just try. Just put forth offense instead of holding these, like, dominant positions and weighing on him in the clinch. Just try to finish him and you will do it. The same type of thing people used to say about Georges St. Pierre when he was going to decisions with Dan Hardy. But because of the narrative heading in, because of the idea, the retroactive idea that Francis Ngannou is going to kill him and Stipe can't win, now people think, well, it's a great performance. And I'm sorry, it feels like I'm hating on him, and I've apologized for this all week because I've stuck to this gun, because I'm not. I think Stipe is one of the best heavyweights we've ever seen. I don't know that I'm willing to call him the best ever, but he's one of the best we've ever seen. Tough as nails, skills all over. That was a bad performance, and I will never not believe that.
This is interesting because there are, as you highlighted, there are two sides. There are the side that, hey, he had, as you said, more call Francis Ngannou what you want. He had very little offense outside of the first probably 7.5 minutes of the entire fight.
He had nothing for the bat. Like,
well, there was a round where he didn't land a single strike, and that's unheard of.
He didn't do anything. And that's like, he was clearly completely spent after 10 minutes. And for 15 minutes, he rallied a little bit in the fifth round. He seemed to have finally caught some form of wind and started winging some big shots. But the reality is, Joe Rogan was sitting there telling you, man, Stipe, or maybe it was Dominic Cruz, man, it's so smart that Stipe is just kind of leaning on him, making him carry his weight. And to a degree, that's true. But, like, if he had just started punching him, he probably gets a doctor stoppage at some point. Like, he probably gets the ref to be like, look, Francis isn't doing anything here. And it was just, it all felt like such a contrived narrative in various parts. Like, I thought Stipe looked bad. I thought he looked tough and smart and skilled. But I thought he should have gotten that man out of there. And he had 15 minutes of basically a punching bag in front of him, and he couldn't do it. And maybe he could have, but he just didn't try. And I think that we should talk about that. I don't think that it's unfair to say that, even though I feel bad because people have been making me feel bad like I'm a Stipe hater, which I'm not.
No, it's not unfair. Like, I mean, I heard that too. I mean, the idea that it is true. Ngannou did nothing for the last 3 rounds, pretty much. I mean, sure, he had the flurry late, but for the most of the fight, he did nothing. And the fact that what now we're calling the best heavyweight maybe of all time, one of the best heavyweights of all time anyways, at the very least, couldn't get that, him out of there. I see your point. Then again, this is also the same crowd that the majority of us were picking Ngannou to knock out Stipe Miocic. And so just a Miocic win, just an upset, is impressive to us. And to a degree, I agree with that as well. I sort of see both sides. I don't really know which way I would lean, but I don't think you're in the wrong for sort of what your opinion is. And by no means is that hating on Stipe.
I don't think so either, but I think sometimes, I think coupled with the fact that I do not agree with the argument that he's the greatest of all time makes me feel or seem like a Stipe hater when I'm not. I don't. And maybe I am a Stipe hater and I don't know it. I don't hate him. And I don't think,
to be fair, I feel like you've always underrated Stipe. Like, I'm not talking about this fight, but there's been other times, even on the show, where you've talked about how it was you. I'm pretty sure I'm thinking of the right person. Like, I remember you talking about how he sort of was here at the right time.
It is, and I still believe that. And that's the thing. I don't think I underrate him. I think I am very properly rating him in that Stipe is a very good fighter. And by the metric of of being the most skilled fighter ever, I think that that is accurate. Meaning that if he fought any of the previous heavyweight, goats, if he fought a prime Fedor today, prime Stipe versus prime Fedor, I think he beats Fedor. But that's not how you judge the greatest of all time arguments in my eyes, because yeah, prime, like any prime fighter of yesteryear is going to lose to the best of today because people get better in groups and everything evolves and moves forward. That's just how that works. So you judge them by their contemporaries. And while his list of achievements looks very good and very gaudy, his 7-fight win streak now is like Mark Hunt, Andrei Arlovski, Alistair Overeem, Fabricio Verdum, Francis Ngannou. These are good big names, but realistically, heavyweight is just a dog shit division. And all of these people are in or nearing their 40s for the most part. Outside of Ngannou, basically everyone else that he's knocked out is near or in their 40s. And they are staying as top 10 relevant heavyweights because the rest of the division is so fucking bad that skilled fighters can exist much longer. If you want to call him the heavyweight GOAT, I don't think that's wrong. It's just I'm not willing to say that yet, just because I think he is preying on a division of older people. And he doesn't have the one contemporary he really would have to cement that claim is Cain Velasquez, who's been dead forever. And just can't seem to not be dead. So, I mean, if Cain comes back and they fight and he beats Cain, if he gets one more win, I think he probably just gets to claim it, because the only other person really with the claim is Fedor, and Fedor's run is not great looking back on it. But I think it's just one of those things, picking a heavyweight GOAT, sort of like picking a lightweight GOAT. It's very difficult because there's so many people that were in it, but as opposed to lightweight where everybody's really fucking good, heavyweight, everybody's fucking terrible. So I think that's being a fair. I think most people will disagree with me, but I'm okay living on this hill by myself.
Let's talk about the co-main event. The UFC Light Heavyweight Championship was on the line, and yet again, we saw the champion come through in this one, defending his title. There was Daniel DC Cormier with a second-round TKO win over Volkan No Time Ozdemir. The mystique of Volkan Ozdemir is over, at least for now. Of course, he is not an unbeatable mystical figure.
He's not an unbeatable mystical figure. He lost to fucking OSP 2 years ago.
No, that was last year. That was less than a year ago.
Was that actually last year? Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a whole thing where if he won on Saturday, it would have been less than a year since making his debut,
right.
which really would have been incredible.
Yeah, that would have been incredible. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, he lost to OSP, so who gives it? Shouldn't have ever had a mystique.
No, it was just the whole obviously quick knockouts, but and No Time hyped that up as well. We saw again in this fight, and we saw in the main event, in the co-main event, sort of the story of the UFC card. There are levels to this game. We saw two definitely worthy challengers, guys that built their name up over a pretty short period of time, that got the wins, got the job done in a lot of their outings, but they weren't able to get over that hump, and in a way, sort of unproven. I mean, Francis Ngannou, a lot of questions about him. Volkan Ozdemir, a lot of questions about him, and we saw wrestling come through. We saw wrestling be the big factor. UFC and Bellator with Rampage and McDonald's wins, and so Daniel Cormier got the second round TKO win. Volkan started out super quickly in the first round, and I started thinking back to a conversation about the fight where there was something in the air, and it almost felt like Ozdemir might get the upset. And Ozdemir was doing pretty good in that opening round, but he seemed to be almost too wild, too quick, and as soon as Cormier got it down to the ground, in the first and in the second, it was really all over. Almost submitted him in the first round. He was literally just seconds away. The bell saved Ozdemir. And then in the second, he got the crucifix position and was able to smother him really en route to a TKO victory. What did you make of the performance? Were you happy with the fight? Did you think it was a good win? What did you make of it?
I think it's a good win. Obviously, Ozdemir is a top 10 light heavyweight, even if he's maybe not the actual greatest fighter of all time. I think we're underselling a little bit Daniel Cormier's performance in some regards. He won with the grappling, but Ozdemir had success for the first 3 minutes, and then after that, Cormier was kind of busting him up on the feet too. And in the second round, before he ended up getting that takedown, I felt like he had kind of established himself as the better guy on the feet too. I mean, obviously he didn't want to hang out there. That would give Ozdemir the best chance to win because once he took him down, it was so quick and so formulaic. But I said beforehand, I thought Cormier could end up standing with Ozdemir for the whole fight and winning. And I think had he chosen to go that route, he probably still would have. But yeah, he did the thing that he's very good at doing. The other, I have two other takeaways from this fight. One, Daniel Cormier is a treasure. A lot of other people have talked about this. We're talking about one of the best fighters of all time. In a world that John Jones doesn't exist in, Daniel Cormier is the best light heavyweight of all time. And, has a case as being one of in that GOAT conversation. He is, I would frankly pick him to beat Stipe Miocic. If he would go up to heavyweight and make that move, he's not going to. And I wouldn't be surprised if Stipe won that fight either. I'm not trying to hate on Stipe. But we're talking about a guy who is really phenomenally gifted, and the only knock against his career that you can find is he happens to compete at the same time in the same weight class as arguably the best pure fighter to ever have competed in the sport in general. And he's a great, wonderful ambassador. He's the hardest working dude. I have literally nothing but respect for Daniel Cormier. And I'm going to say all that, and then I'm going to give you my third takeaway, which is this. I don't think Daniel Cormier keeps his belt. I think Alexander Gustafsson beats him when they rematch. I thought that going into the year when we did a predictions for the year. I said Gustafsson was going to be your champion by the end of 2018. I feel more confident with that after his performance on Saturday. If they do rematch and Cormier is able to hold on to the belt until he's going to retire next March is when he's time framing his retirement. Good for him. Just wanted to throw this stat out there. If he does that, he will have been UFC champion for something like 1,300 days, which puts him 7th on the all-time list of title reigns in the UFC, and only like 100 days south of John Jones's title reign as a light heavyweight. So if he manages to do that, that's very impressive. I don't think he does. I feel very confident in Alexander Gustafsson in a rematch at this point, and I hope we get to see that fight because I think it's awesome.
I'm curious what you saw in the Ozdemir fight on Saturday that made you more confident, because I was on the other end. I was picking Cormier to be the champion at the end of this year, and I maintain that because I'm not less confident. I'm not more confident. I didn't see anything that made me think to either be more confident or less. So what did you see?
I think he looked slower and more hittable on the feet. I mean, obviously his groundwork was sensational, but I think I took from that Ozdemir needs to work on that area. I think he'll be able to I don't think that Gustafsson's going to win it in a walk, but I do think, their first fight was extremely close. I think it ended up being a split decision, actually.
It was, although it shouldn't have been. I mean, one judge gave it to Gustafsson, and that was kind of atrocious.
It shouldn't have been, but it was very close. Cormier almost got knocked out at one point, and I believe that in the rematch, he's going to be more hittable. He's going to be slow. I think it looked like we were starting to see his age a little bit. This man is 39 years old or approaching it fast. I think he's still 38, but he turns 39 in March. So I think we started to see a little bit of that. And it's just going to be harder for him going forward. And I just think Gustafsson is going to be able to piece him up on the feet and keep it mostly on the feet for most of the fight and land the better, harder shots. And I didn't love the way Cormier was taking shots. I thought he looked very predictable on the feet. John Jones caught him after figuring out that Cormier keeps ducking his head down and to the right. And so John Jones went up high with a left kick. Cormier still had that tendency in spades, and he was ducking a ton of stuff from Ozdemir down in this way. And if Ozdemir started timing something, maybe he could have John Jones him. I think Gustafsson will sort of see these tendencies and be able to take advantage of it. I just think he's going to win it. A close competitive fight, but I think he's going to get it done.
Fair enough. I want to go back to last week, and we had a big fight announcement in the lightweight division, of course. The long-awaited, highly anticipated, just pray to God that it'll happen this time. Tony Ferguson, the interim champion, as of the second, supposedly, maybe, who knows. He's taken on Khabib Nurmagomedov. This fight was supposed to happen in December 2015. It was supposed to happen in April 2016. It was supposed to happen in March of 2017. And now it's supposed to go down in April of this year. And again, please, MMA gods, please let it happen. This was, as you guys may remember on our predictions show just earlier this month, I said this was my fight. If I could be matchmaker for a day, this is the one fight I'm booking, Khabib versus Ferguson for the title. And we got it, so that's great, but we don't know what belt it's going to be for yet. So the UFC, a day before UFC 220 in Boston, they held a press conference with Tony Ferguson, with Khabib, with Max Holloway, and with Frankie Edgar. Of course, the latter two will be headlining 222 in March. And the first question, unsurprisingly, was to Dana, saying, so what belt is this going to be for? Is Conor McGregor stripped of the lightweight championship finally, or is this going to be an interim title fight? And Dana White was very bizarre, very unclear, and he said this would be for the undisputed championship, but he refused to say that McGregor was stripped. Now, it seemed very unclear, and yes, it still is unclear, and no, we don't have the exact answers, although he did say in a later interview with Aaron Bronstetter of TSN.ca, he said that his plan, apparently, is that if McGregor agrees to defend the title sometime between now and when Ferguson-Khabib happens, it'll be an interim title fight. If he says he doesn't want to, he'll be stripped, and it'll be for the vacant lightweight championship for the undisputed belt. Nonetheless, still really silly, still really odd. What did you make of that press conference? What did you make of Dana being Dana?
Dumb, but whatever. I mean, it's dumb just because it's so easy to avoid. There was 0% chance he didn't know that question was going to be offered, and so he should have had a clear answer then. Like you said, Aaron Bronstetter, I think, got the real answer, and the real answer is that this is on the books as it sits right now, an interim title fight. And if they cannot get a deal on paper with Conor between now and then by the time the fight rolls around, it will just be for the actual title. And I think Dana believes, as is probably accurate, that that's not going to happen. Conor is not going to agree. At that point, he's going to still be, taking some time off or whatever, and that this will, in fact, end up becoming for the lightweight title. The whole thing that is why it's stupid to me is that if Conor agrees to defend his belt, then he's not defending his belt against one of the best two lightweights, which means we're guaranteed that it's Conor Nate Diaz, because he's not going to fight Eddie Alvarez again. He's not, like, But
I think what Dana is talking about when he says if he agrees to defend the title, that's against the winner of Ferguson versus Khabib.
It can't be, because that's a nothing. Like, agreeing to do that is not a binding anything. Like, Conor can just be like, no, I don't want to do that, because he's done that before. He already said, I think the next time I'll fight is Tony Ferguson, because I need to defend the belt. Like, the words don't mean anything. So the only thing that would mean something is having him sign an actual fight contract against somebody, and that would be Nate Diaz. And apparently, I was unaware of this until we started speaking. Nate Diaz says he's ready to go again. I won't be surprised if Nate Diaz being ready to go again is in part and parcel of this. But frankly, what I really think is that Conor is just going to let them take the belt, because who gives a shit? He certainly doesn't. And he's going to fight George St. Pierre in the fall. That's what's going to happen. And this will be for the true lightweight title. And that's fine. Everybody's happy. They should have stripped Conor ages ago, because Conor is not – the belts are promotional tools, and Conor doesn't need promotional tools. So he doesn't need the belt. And it doesn't do anything to have him sit on a division forever and fuck everything up. So just strip him, because everybody's better for it.
Yeah. It's just – I think the thing that I hate the most is why Dana – the Dana interview with Aaron Bronstetter of TSN, it was clear. It was sort of clear. We sort of got the gist of what the plan is. Again, nothing is concrete. It seems like everything is complete opposite of concrete, but at least he made some sense. Whereas in the press conference, with all the media watching, with everybody watching it, even the public, it was super unclear. Of course, we can't have two undisputed champions. The UFC does a lot of weird stuff, but I'm not sure if they can even go that far. And so I found that really just annoying. He knows the answer, and he said it, half an hour later. But
it's extremely unprofessional.
But again, that's Dana White.
Yeah.
And
to be fair, I think you can argue that you can't have – there's no such thing as an undisputed champion when there's an interim belt.
No, technically Conor McGregor isn't the undisputed champion right now.
Somebody is disputing his title reign with cause. So it's more undisputed as the way to identify what belt we're talking about, the real belts. But, whatever. The fight between Ferguson and Khabib is to determine the best lightweight on the planet. That's what it is. And
at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. Conor can go fight Nate Diaz if he wants. He can go fight GSP. And really, at the time, as of right now, I don't know what Conor does as far as who he fights. Do I think he'll fight the winner of Khabib Ferguson? No, I don't. I mean, something in me feels like he wants the belt, but it doesn't make any sense for him to want it. I mean, I know it's shiny, it looks good, but at the end of the day, belt or no belt, he's making the same amount of money, and it's a shit ton. And so I would have to agree with what you said about Conor just not caring. And so if I'm going to predict, the UFC, chances are they're going to end up finding a way to have Conor still the champion come April 7th, or whenever the Ferguson.
If they do, that's stupid. Because frankly, it's better to strip him of the title, not just for the sake of everyone's sanity, but it gives Conor better promotional tools. Like, Conor can just walk around and be like, I'm the real champ, and have a belt and whatever. Or you can take the belt from him and he can walk around and be like, oh, we all know that's a fake belt. I'm the real champ. And it gives him more ammunition. It's just a better promotional tool for him to be the champ in exile. Like, that is just way better storyline. So if they don't strip him, they're fucking morons. But the UFC have time and time again proved that they suck at promoting fighters, so I won't be surprised if they don't.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned Nate Diaz. He said in an Instagram post, and let me see if I can pull that up real quick. He basically hinted, it was a bit of a cryptic tweet if you want to, or Instagram post if you want to call it that. But he's hinting at a comeback. He said May or June, and any fighter can say whatever they want, and it seems like sometimes guys like Nate Diaz might not say realistic things. But Mark Raimondi, your colleague from MMA Fighting, he said sources told him that this is legitimate. Nate Diaz is really interested in coming back in this time frame. So he said, quote, sick of sitting around waiting for you fuckers to do shit. There's no excitement in this fight shit. Step your games up. I'll see you around May, June. Sincerely, the real champ. So I'm kind of happy Nate Diaz is coming back. He's a fun fighter to watch. There's no one like Nate Diaz other than Nick Diaz. I mean, yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm happy to have him back. I don't know who the fuck he thinks he's going to come back and fight, though. Like, to me, this only makes sense if he's going to fight Conor. Because it's the only fight that makes sense for him realistically. Like,
because if Conor doesn't happen, then he's like stuck fighting Eddie Alvarez or Dustin Poirier, and that makes no sense.
Fighting Eddie Alvarez is a waste of time. Dustin Poirier, maybe Justin Gaethje, if Justin Gaethje ends up beating Dustin Poirier, maybe.
Nate Diaz is only fighting for a title or Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't want to fight either of those guys fighting for a title. That's just fucking dumb. Khabib it would be savage. It would be the worst. Like, that's the worst fight Nate Diaz could ever ask for. Khabib would just murder him.
Yeah.
Like, it would gain him nothing. Like, and frankly, Tony probably beats him too, although that's at least a winnable fight. Like, the only fight that makes sense to me, is maybe Justin Gaethje. But really, if he's coming back to fight Conor. So
and I think there's a good chance of that happening because, I mean, I know Conor GSP could happen. I predicted it would, but hey, my as far as my confidence levels for whether Conor GSP or Conor Diaz happen, they're kind of 50-50 the same. So
my guess now, I'm still sticking by that I think Conor probably doesn't fight, but my belief is that this is Nate trying to put the ball back in motion for a fight between him and Conor at lightweight for the title. Now that Ferguson and Khabib have a fight on the books for a belt, that leaves Conor free to return this summer with his belt, and Nate can fight for that belt with the big money fight. They close out the trilogy, and so I think that this is Nate. I think this is a leverage play by Nate, and it could work. I won't be super shocked if Conor decides to come back, but if he doesn't, I still think it's more likely Conor and GSP are texting each other sweet nothings in the night about fighting at the next Madison Square Garden card in November.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I wanted to bring up for the same card, UFC 223 in Brooklyn, New York, in early April. In the co-main event, we have a strawweight title rematch between former champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk and the current title holder Thug Rose Namajunas. Great fight, of course. Interesting rematch. I think it's well deserved for Joanna, of course, longest reigning strawweight champion by a mile, one of the best female fighters to ever do it. So I'm not surprised this is happening. I'm glad it's happening. And this will also sort of let Jessica Andrade fight Tisa Torres, see where Carolina will fall when she fights Felice Herrig. And so there wasn't a clear contender. I mean, you could argue Andrade deserves the next
Andrade was the clear contender. This is a dog shit fight.
But
I hate this fight.
I don't mind it. But I wanted to mention the opening odds, which I actually found a little surprising. Now, Joanna Jędrzejczyk opened, according to Joey Odessa, at -225 with the comeback on Nunes at +180. And you're the betting man, so you're going to have the better or the more trustworthy opinion per se. And good job on the gambling god. And I don't mean that sarcastically, although you went for three, so a rough start, but nonetheless.
They were all okay, obviously the Quentin Jackson pick that was dead wrong. Hand up. I picked three underdogs in those 1 for 3. And I think the Lima pick was right. Like, if you look at that fight, Lima lost 3 rounds, but he did by far more damage. And I think he was almost
Pride rules. He probably wins.
He definitely wins in Pride rules, and he was almost a +200 underdog. Like, I think the value is there on that.
Douglas Lima at 2-1 is not a bad bet.
Yeah, I think that he was way undervalued, and I stand by the effort. So, yeah, it's cool. As far as these odds go.
A little crazy. I mean, I expected Joanna to open as the favorite just because she was the big thing, but I think they're not giving Nunes the respect she deserves.
No, they're not. It's insane. I expected Joanna to be the favorite. I thought it would be closer to -120, much closer to even, just a slight edge for Joanna because there's a reason she was the favorite in the first place. She does have some stylistic advantages in several capacities, but now that we've seen that Rose can do what she did, to have the odds that wide to me means that they think people are going to look at this fight and go, Joanna's still better. She just got caught in the middle of a bad weight cut and then got caught with some punches, but 9 times out of 10 she's still going to win this fight. I don't think that's accurate. Odds are wide. And the last thing I'll say is this fight's dog shit. Jessica Andrade deserved a title shot. I hate doing immediate rematches unless it's a controversial loss. Sure as shit was not controversial. I hate every immediate rematch. I just always have. I think even fighters like Anderson Silva or George St. Pierre, whatever, doing these things. Jose Aldo. And Jose Aldo didn't get an immediate rematch with Max Holloway. He did because of short notice. I think that's better. Let them get back and get a win in. Let them build their confidence back up and not just run those two fucking fighters at each other again because it's stupid. And Jessica Andrade, clear cut, no bones about it, deserved a title shot. And she's getting fucked here, and that sucks, but she's going to beat the hell out of Tecia Torres and get the next title shot anyway, so whatever.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody, and they picked Torres to beat Andrade. It might have been Mookie. I'll have to listen back to that before you go shit on him for that, but that was an interesting.
I like Tecia Torres as a fighter. I think that Jessica Andrade beats everyone that's not named Joanna Jędrzejczyk in that division.
Well, I mean, we predicted the next champions at the end of 2018. My strawweight champion was Jessica Andrade, and so I don't know.
I think if Andrade fought Namajunas, Andrade wins. Pretty straightforwardly. I think that it's possible we're in a rock, paper, scissors now, where Rose's kind of power striking at range is enough to hit and hurt Joanna, but Joanna's takedown defense is so good and her volume so strong that Andrade can't make up for the differences there. And then conversely, Andrade can kind of work a pressure boxing game, work the body, and work takedowns on Rose. And maybe we're in a rock, paper, scissors little triumvirate here. I think there's also a potential that Joanna Jędrzejczyk is just old now. And she's not old. I think she's 30, but in the lower weight classes, age accelerates much quicker.
Plus, she's been pretty active.
She's been very active. She's been in a lot of 5-round fights. She's taken punches, and she's been doing a harsh weight cut on her. I thought she was just going to move up to 125 and take that belt, but that's not the case apparently. And so we get to do this again, and it's fine. I mean, it's high-level MMA, so I'm not going to complain too much, but I don't really like the fight.
Fair enough. Another women's fight I want to talk about. This one is a, quote, super fight we have potentially happening at International Fight Week. Cris Cyborg went out on social media the other day. I believe it was yesterday. It might have been the day before. Can't keep the days straight. And she said she has agreed to fight Amanda Nunes. She is down, of course. Initially, coming off the Holly Holm fight last month, she wasn't so, she didn't like the Nunes fight so much. And that was even up until a couple weeks ago, but something's changed. I know she wanted it to be on a big stage. If it was on a big stage, she would consider it. apparently she did consider it, and apparently she has said she's wanted it, and now apparently the ball is in Nunes' court. Of course, nothing's official. Who knows what's really going on behind the scenes? That's just what Cyborg / Ray Ellerby is saying on their Twitter account. So are you? I mean, do you like Cyborg Nunes? Because I know that wasn't something. Like, I mean, I can't say I don't like it. I absolutely love it. But I remember after the home fight, thinking, let Nunes do her thing at bantamweight, let Cyborg do her thing at featherweight. I think the reason I don't love it as much as I should is the fight's great, but I want them to build the featherweight division. I don't want these bantamweight versus Cris Cyborg fights anymore. They need to bring featherweights in, and we've talked about this before. As we said, go to the freaking basketball court and say, hey, who wants to be a fighter? Go to wherever, and, get fighters in, sign new featherweights. That's what I want them to do. But here we go, another bantamweight versus featherweight. But at least this is a great matchup.
I have a complicated answer here, and I think that this fight makes a lot of sense right now. There's no real clear-cut contender at 35 for Nunes now, what with Rocky Pennington being injured and kind of being on the shelf for a little bit. And so it makes sense for her to now, fight Cris Cyborg, because there's the only Cyborg fight that really makes any type of sense otherwise is the Megan Anderson. Megan Anderson says she's going to fight this year, but has been very vague about what's been going on in her personal life that pulled her off the UFC card last year and her timetable and all that. So I think this fight makes sense on that ground. It makes sense in another ground to me. We talked about this at one of the other circuses that we did together. I think the beginning of the year one, we did the prediction circus, where I am of the opinion that they should just make a women's heavyweight division, which is 135 pounds and up. So just fold because weight divisions exist so fighters don't weight divisions exist so fighters won't be fighting like wildly inadequate combinations of people, but like realistically, is 10 pounds that big of a difference? And there aren't women's heavyweights really out there with the exception of Gabby Garcia. So to me, it's just kind of like, why don't we just make the 135 and up or whatever that weight division is all the rest of the women. And so then we get Cris Cyborg fighting the 135ers, which is really all anybody's ever wanted. Nobody gave a shit about her fighting the 145ers because there are only like 5 of them. But they did care about her fighting Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm and Amanda Nunes. So it makes sense for me because this just does that. It shortcuts and gets us to the place where I want us to be, which is I want Cris Cyborg fighting the best women that are somewhere near her optimal weight range. So I'm fine with it on that point. But I don't like it for one reason, and that is, you are correct. I would like them to build a division here. If they're going to have it, I'd like them to build the division. But I think at this point, we can pretty conclusively say they're not building a division. They don't give a shit about this division. This is the Cyborg belt, and as soon as Cyborg loses, that's the end of the division because Bellator has poached all of the existing 145 talent. The UFC has done nothing to try and sign any 145 talent. They are trying to steal the Invicta champion, for a one-off fight with Cyborg, and then they'll probably send her back or whatever. They're just not committed to the division, and that sort of makes sense to me because as soon as Cyborg loses, is there really a huge reason to have what is by far the thinnest division in mixed martial arts around? And I don't think so. So when Amanda Nunes beats Cris Cyborg, she's going to have 2 belts for a minute, and then eventually she's never going to defend the 145 belt because they won't care, and she'll just be the 135-pound champion. Cris Cyborg, maybe they'll have a rematch if it's close, and then Cris Cyborg will retire because she's not trying to stick around the game that long anyway. So, yeah, it makes sense to me, and I like the fight because it's a great fight. I think that it pretty clearly establishes, at least in my head, that they don't give a shit about keeping this division up, and they're not going to try. It is going to exist as long as Cyborg's a champion, and then after that, it's over.
I'm curious, you probably know slightly more on the whole thing. I know Cris Cyborg / Ray Ellerby, whoever was on the count, probably Ray, and Megan Anderson got into it on Twitter, I think last night, and I know you did a story on it for your morning report this morning. So I know there was a lot of marriage, immigration stuff. What was that all about? That was kind of weird from Cyborg's
I have no idea, and I have no interest in figuring it out. It seems like it was kind of a low blow from Cyborg, but I just kind of looked at it and went, you know what? just gonna wipe my hands and I'm just not gonna get down to the thick of this because there's just too much. I'm done.
Yeah, typically it's stuff I don't want to get into, but I figured since we had mentioned Cyborg already, why not? But yeah, kind of a weird situation, but kind of just another PR kerfuffle, as the guys over at If I Did It would say. Let's talk about Demetrious Johnson real quick. Demetrious Johnson, for quite a while, has been hesitant about taking the TJ Dillashaw super fight flyweight champion versus bantamweight champion. Because there's deserving flyweights, according to him. This was, of course, before the Ray Borg fight, mostly. Now that that's over, he seemed a little more. He knows realistically he'll probably end up fighting Dillashaw, and so now he's gone out and said that just this past weekend he is down. He is ready to fight Dillashaw. He wants to fight. He wants an International Fight Week, of course, big stage, big opportunity, big audience, pay-per-view, all of that. But what do you make of this? Are you happy that DJ versus Dillashaw is one step closer?
I'm happy if it means one thing. I've maintained this position the entire time. I think those two people fighting is a fun, compelling fight. I have zero interest in watching them compete at 125 pounds. If they're competing at 135 pounds, it's awesome. It's one of my favorite fights you can make. I don't need to see TJ Dillashaw try and make the cut to 125 for the first time ever, because that's just fucking stupid. He's already a small man, and to lose another 10 pounds of weight, which would be, like 11% of his body weight extra that he would need to cut, is not something I care to invest in. Also, it's unfair because Demetrious Johnson is the guy who is one of the greatest of all time, and he deserves the chance to fight for a second title, not TJ Dillashaw. So if they're doing this right and it's going to be at 135 pounds, I'm much more interested, especially because it makes the fight more interesting. I think DJ is going to win either weight class. I think at 125, he's going to smoke the shit out of a sucked out, half dead TJ Dillashaw. So, at 135, at least Dillashaw is coming in with the natural weight advantage, and that makes it interesting to me. Yeah, if they make it, awesome. The only other reason I hate this fight is because especially if Dillashaw is dropping down, 135 is arguably the most interesting weight division in MMA outside of men's lightweight. And he should just be fucking defending his belts. I just want champions to defend belts. That's all I want, because I don't know, I'm a crazy person, I guess, but I don't like, super fights are fun to an extent, and this fight will be fun if it happens. But seriously, 135 is one of the deepest division with the most going on, and I want to see him fight those other people too. So I'm okay with it if it happens. Especially if it happens at 135. If it happens at 125, I'm much less excited about it, but whatever, I'll still watch.
Now, here's a take that I don't think really anybody has thought about. I don't think this would be ideal, but I want to throw it out anyways. If TJ happens at 135, if DJ wins, so let's say he stays at 35, I think seeing what unfolds in the flyweight division with DJ not the unbreakable, unbeatable force he has been forever at the top, that'd be kind of interesting. Who wins the title? Probably Cejudo, but Benavidez beat him, although close fight, scorecards were a bit iffy. Do they re-sign Kyoji Horiguchi? Does he go on a run? I mean, probably not, but I'd be interested to see what happens with the flyweight division, other than completely falling apart, which is probably likely as well.
I don't think so. Flyweight's an entrenched division.
What's that?
Flyweight's an entrenched division, and Cejudo takes the belt. That's good.
But I feel like we would get a lot more competition there. Cejudo wins the belt. I don't know. He goes on a 10-fight tear.
I think Cejudo beats everyone. Maybe if the UFC had kept Kyoji Horiguchi, I think that would have been a very interesting test. I think Cejudo probably puts together a run as champion at that point in time. But they are going to be interesting, compelling fights, because flyweight is actually an interesting division, and it gets shit on because people are assholes, and in part because Demetrious Johnson is so good that everybody kind of thinks it's a shitty division, but it's really like Joseph Benavidez, Henry Cejudo, Kyoji Horiguchi. These guys are really good fighters.
Yeah.
So
I look
it's not
at
a bad division.
if we take DJ out of the flyweight picture, I look at it as when GSP stepped away back in November 2013. Look what happened. Johnny Hendricks won the title, but Robbie Lawler got it back right away. And we had this, it was a transition period, but it was fun because we had competitive, compelling matchups where I love dominant champions, but there's almost a point where it's not too much, but when you get rid of that champion, it makes it interesting because no one can beat them, but everybody else can beat everyone else. And so I think that'd be interesting. Ultimately, I don't think it's ideal because then bantamweight is so good. Bantamweight's good already. You add DJ, it's tremendous. And then you take away DJ from flyweight. Again, makes it interesting, but just another name from a division that a lot of people think is weak. It's ultimately not.
Maybe Dodson drops back down to flyweight then. Like
Yeah.
Dodson has gotten screwed twice by judges in bantamweight. Those are his losses. He lost 2 bullshit decisions. This should be a guy who's knocking on a bantamweight title shot. Maybe he drops down. And you give me Dodson Cejudo for the fucking flyweight title, I'm in. I'm all goddamn in. Like this shit is cool, and we should be encouraging DJ to move up to 35. He has the record. Probably going to never lose that record. Like it seems likely, unless John Jones returns, but he won't ever get to have that many consecutive wins because he's such a fuck up. So, like, that's a record that's going to hold for a good long time, one would think. So, like, now he can start branching out and doing some shit. And like I said, I think DJ beats every bantamweight alive. I think he beats them all. So, like, I would love for him to move up. I hope he's moving up and it's not this insane idea of TJ Dillashaw moving down.
So Dana White finally said, unsurprisingly, CM Punk will get another shot in the octagon. A, I don't really care. B, I'm interested to see, are there any improvements he's made from the Mickey Gall fight in September 2016? So there's that intrigue, I guess. But other than that, I don't really care. But I figured I'd throw this in anyways.
One would assume that he has made improvements because he's ostensibly.
But that doesn't make him a good fighter.
No, he's not going to be a UFC caliber fighter. Have him fight Conor Gracie, who fought on Bellator and looked fucking terrible. Maybe he could beat him. But like, yeah, I'm fine. That's the thing. I always said this. I was one of the few people who's pro CM Punk. And the irony of that is I don't watch professional wrestling. I've never watched professional wrestling. I've seen some events. I've watched a couple of WrestleManias with friends, but like I don't follow pro wrestling. So I don't have, it's not like I'm a CM Punk stan. But I was just sort of generally intrigued with the idea that this guy would be having an entire career unfold in front of us. I'll tell you what, the one thing I started thinking about often, and nobody's really talked about this, is CM Punk has gotten me thinking, and when he announced that he was going to get another fight, is the UFC is so different now because CM Punk is going to get a second fight despite that shellacking. If the UFC had Kimbo Slice now, he would never have gotten cut. There was a time when Dana White cut Kimbo fucking Slice because he wasn't UFC caliber. Can you imagine that happening now?
Of course not. No, not at all.
He would headline pay-per-views as long as people bought them, and they would keep bringing in people he could beat, which is smart and promotionally relevant. And it was always stupid that they cut him, but they cut him. And like,
so now Dana's gotten smarter, although in other ways he's gotten a lot dumber.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild to me to look back and think not that long ago, Dana White cut arguably the actual biggest star in the sport at that moment in time because he was concerned about the sporting aspect of his product. How the times have fucking changed.
That is a point I never thought about, but
nobody's talked about it, and it's been eating at me for like months.
It is a good point at that. One last point before we move on to Charlotte, which won't take us very long. We've gone on for a while, so we'll probably just talk 1 or 2 fights on that one. I'm not a tremendous card anyways, for Big Fox standards. I just want to quickly mention Robert Whittaker. Not much analysis to do on this one, but Dana White gave an update on Whittaker, the UFC middleweight champion, who pulled out of his UFC 221 title defense. Would have been his first title defense against former champion Luke Rockhold. White gave an update on Bobby Knuckles over the weekend ahead of UFC 220, and or I guess after UFC 220, and he said, Whitaker had a staph infection in his stomach. From what I understand, it wasn't treated properly and started to eat away at parts of his organs. He's in serious condition, so it's going to be a minute before he's back, I think. Hopefully it turns around quick, but that stuff is life-threatening if not treated the right way. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Whitaker, we wish him a quick recovery, a good recovery, a successful recovery. But, man, staph infection in the stomach doesn't sound the most fun.
It would be the most MMA fucking thing in the world if we get an exciting young champion like Robert Whitaker, who looks poised to go on an actual run of dominance. I mean, the Luke Rockhold fight is a serious test for him. But outside of Rockhold, like, he's gonna be a clean favorite over anybody else he would fight, and this would be like something fucking awesome. And it would be very MMA for him to suddenly just get sidelined for like 3 years and come back and never be the same. So hoping he stays well, because I think Rockhold Whitaker is one of the most interesting fights you can make in MMA now these days, and I was super looking forward to that fight. So I mean, we get a good one. The interim title replacement match is still a very good fight, but I was really looking forward to Rockhold Whitaker, and I'm sad we're losing that. But I hope Bobby Nux is going to come out of this clean.
And just for what it's worth, Whitaker went on Instagram the next day. His whole team, Whitaker included, was very quiet about all of this from when it was announced he was out of the fight to basically this past weekend. But now that White threw that out there, Whitaker gave an update. He posted a brief message on Instagram and with a picture of himself. And he's not in the hospital. He's up and walking. He looks okay. And so that was promising too. Just that he's not. I mean, he's just opening. Well, he says sick as a dog, but at least my nutrition is on point, and it's a picture with one of his supplement sponsors. So he seems to be getting better. Maybe, hopefully, maybe that's just wishful thinking. But yeah, again, speedy recovery goes out to Robert Whitaker. Let's move on real quick to UFC on Fox 27. It goes down from Charlotte, North Carolina this Saturday night on Big Fox. Do not miss it. You will be there, probably cage-eyed, maybe in the back doing interviews. What will you be? I know it's a one-man show, so are you just going to be doing the interviews in the back?
It depends on what how they're going to do things. I expect to be in the back for at least the first half. When the main card comes, I might end up cage side. If they come in and tell us that they're not going to do a full post-fight presser, then I'll just be in the back. Because occasionally, the last one I went to in Nashville, they just sort of did rolling things, and after every fight the winner would come back and talk to us instead of doing like an actual post-fight event. So if they do that, I'll be in the back doing interviews the whole time. If they don't, I'll be in the back doing interviews with some of the undercard guys or whatever as they come through, and then go out for the main card, kind of get the ambiance in the feel a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited. It's my third event covering the sport. So and I like Charlotte a lot. It's a good city, and the event, it's not a great one by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not a bad one. The main event is a little bit intriguing. There are a couple of interesting fights on there. You got a lot of decent, or not a lot, but you got a couple of decent kind of future prospects in there. So it's an okay card. It's not the best one ever, but it's okay.
Considering we'll be previewing each and every fight in depth in just a couple days on Before the Battle with Wes Riddle, assuming he joins us, which isn't a given, but hopefully fingers are crossed. Let's just talk about the main event. We have Jacare Souza, Ronaldo Souza taking on Derek Brunson in the middleweight division, number 3 versus number 8. Intriguing fight, as you said, interesting one. Souza is coming off the knockout loss to Robert Whitaker. On the other hand, Derek Brunson has won a couple in a row. Daniel Kelly knocked him out real quick. Lyoto Machida knocked him out real quick in Brazil, just after Colby Covington called the entire crowd animals or whatever he said. And so that was, he's on a bit of a run after losing to Anderson Silva, although shouldn't have been a loss. And, of course, losing to Whitaker at the end of 2016. Souza, I think the big thing here, the big if is, does Jacare Souza come back the killer he was before losing to Whitaker? I don't know.
I think Derek Brunson is going to knock out Jacare Souza. Souza's old. He's 38 years old. This is a guy who's always a great athlete. He's still going to be a good athlete. His chin has now been cracked. And I think he can't, he's always been underrated for his stand-up work, but he is I believe he's easier to knock out than Derek Brunson is. And more to the point, I don't think he can take Derek Brunson down. Derek Brunson has never been taken down in the UFC. He has not ever been taken down in the UFC. And now if Brunson does that thing that he did against Bobby Knuckles and he runs forward, just lunging punches way out here and leaves his chin out there, Souza can bolt him. I think he seems to have kind of calmed down a lot. He seems to just be developing into a better fighter. And I expect Derek Brunson to sprawl and brawl Jacare Souza. And over the course of 5 rounds, Derek Brunson hits really fucking hard. And I think at some point he connects. And that's the end of Jacare Souza, who will be one of, if not the best fighters to have ever competed in the UFC and not earned a title shot. It's because of Michael Bisping, Jacare Souza will never have competed for a UFC belt, which is fucking insane.
And possibly never been the champion, just because I guess before, I mean,
Souza would have beat the shit out of Michael Bisping.
Of course, but even before that, I mean, I would have picked Jacare against someone like Weidman. The Rockhold fight or rematch, I guess, is close to me. I know you would probably disagree on that, but
yeah, I think Rockhold beats the shit out of Jacare.
Now he does, but even like I'm talking before the Whitaker fight.
I mean, I would have picked him anyway. I think Luke Rockhold is probably the best middleweight in the world, but maybe he's not, and maybe it's Bobby Knuckles.
I think it's Bobby Knuckles for sure, but we'll have to wait
close.
More than
flip a coin, and I'll pick which one on that. Like they're 1A and 1B to me.
Okay, fair enough. I'm picking Derek Brunson here as well. I think it's a bad matchup for Jacare. Not confident in his chin, not really confident in him in general. I picked him against Whitaker, although I faded Whitaker in both of his standout 2017 performances. Obviously regret that wholeheartedly, and I do think Whitaker is the best middleweight on the planet. I think he'll be the best middleweight on the planet for a very long time, assuming this staph infection does clear up in the near future. Again, fingers are crossed. I think Brunson will knock out Souza. Just not a good matchup. Souza is a grappler. He's a tremendous grappler, one of the best jiu-jitsu artists in the UFC, in MMA. But Brunson is a wrestler at heart. You know, he has the wrestling roots, and he's a great takedown. He's good at defending takedowns. You just said it as well. 100% takedown accuracy, takedown defense accuracy, that is. And it's going to be a stand-up fight, and he's going to get the better of Jacare. Jacare is not going to be able to take those punches, not after getting knocked out to Whitaker. Luckily, Souza took time off. He took quite a while off. That was way back in April of last year, so that's good. At least he's not coming off at a 4 or 5 month layoff. That'd be even worse. But even still, I'm not sure who I'm not sure Souza is who he was even this time last year. And so Derek Brunson is my pick. Souza's getting old. Brunson isn't young, but fight years, not nearly as old. And so Derek Brunson, within 10 minutes, I'll say, maybe even the first round. So that's my pick for UFC Charlotte main event, UFC on Fox 27. And that does it. I think we've covered everything.
I don't even know, man. Sure.
I guess we didn't mention that we're not going to do Guess It Doesn't Get It or Dumb Questions. Guess It Doesn't Get It, I skipped it on purpose because we had quite a bit to talk about, as you guys just saw. Dumb Questions, asked for them, didn't get any. So hopefully that changes for next week, but we will have to play that by ear. So that does it for episode 147 of the MMA Circus. Thank you all for listening and watching, depending how you're consuming the MMA Circus, whether you're listening right now live on YouTube or later on. You can find the MMA Circus on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Google Play, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Player FM, Overcast, Podcast Addict, and I think that is pretty much it. Jed, I would assume everybody listening knows where to find you and is probably following you on social media and knows where to find your coverage of mixed martial arts, but if they don't, let them know where.
I do my work for MMAfighting.com. Go over to the website, check around, either find stuff I do or stuff my colleagues do. They're all fucking great at their jobs, so that's awesome. And like I mentioned earlier, started a new column with Alexander Lee. We watch a shit ton of fights, and we watch a lot of lower recognized organizations, and so each week we kind of try and highlight some of the fights that flew under the radar for the not as hardcore fan. It's called Missed Fists, comes out every Monday. This week we talked about Joey Davis's showing out on the Bellator prelims that I think most people would have seen just because the clip kind of went around a lot. We also talked about what would have been a title fight from the Alaska Fighting Championships. It ended up actually being a really fun fight. You can go peep that on Fight Pass. And then we had a ONE FC championship fight that was super fun. It was terrible.
That was crazy. I read the article and I watched that one fight. And that was insane.
That fight's, I mean, it's early yet, but that's round of the year so far for me. That thing was freaking nuts. I don't remember what our other fight was. Do you recall off the top of your head?
You did Bellator, Joey Davis. I don't know. Did you mention that?
We did Joey Davis, ONE FC, Alaska Fighting Championship. Oh, we did the LFA one with Jeff Winsky, who it was a kind of a fun fight with a submission in the first round, but mainly we talked about it because his nickname is I'm Gonna, because his last name is Winsky. But yeah, it's a fun column, we think, and it lets you kind of see some more fights that you don't have to watch the whole Alaska Fighting Championship card like we do. You can just see the thing that's fun from it. So peep that. Every
dirty work.
Yep, every fight day I have a gambling column coming out now. Peep that, and yeah, that's it. Oh, on Twitter, Jed Meshew. Give me a follow.
You guys can find me on the Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. You can find all of my MMA writing over at bloodyelbow.com. That is bloodyelbow.com. You might be listening to this show on there already, so you're probably there, maybe. You can find my other shows exclusively on this YouTube channel. The MMA, or not the MMA Circus, that's the one you're listening to right now, but also Before the Battle and Beyond Combat. Before the Battle will be live this Thursday, previewing UFC Charlotte, UFC on Fox 27, whatever you want to call it, in depth. You, me, Wes Riddle, the three of us talking about those fights. Tomorrow night on Beyond Combat, episode maybe 7, I think it is, I'll be joined by MMA Mania's Andrew Pearson, who is on a mission to stop smartphone addiction. So I'm interested to talk to Andrew about that tomorrow night on Beyond Combat. I think that's pretty much it. Go give us a thumbs up down there. Go subscribe to the MMA Circus YouTube channel. Go comment if you like the show. If you don't like it, any feedback, any suggestions, any just generic comments. You want to let me know that my haircut's nice. You want to talk about Jed's face or anything goes in the comments section. This is YouTube after all. So that's pretty much it. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. For Jed Meshew, my name is Nick Baldwin, and we're out.